AI is moving fast into the financial reporting and accounting workflows audit committees are supposed to oversee. But for many boards, governance so far has been a reassuring management update rather than real scrutiny. Today, we're digging into what genuine oversight looks like. What directors should expect management to demonstrate about how AI driven decisions get made and documented, how accountability shifts as these systems grow more autonomous, and which controls audit committees should prioritize first. With Ed Magee, director of WD-40 Company, we'll also cover the harder question: how directors can tell the difference between AI governance that's substantive and AI governance that's just checking a box. Ed, as companies increasingly use AI in financial reporting, accounting, and other critical workflows, what should directors expect management to be able to demonstrate about how AI driven decisions are made, reviewed, and documented?
Yeah, so I think I'll start off with just very just some of the ways to think about this, and I think you've got to understand what systems are touching your data. I think you've got to understand where is the human in the loop, and then the third thing is there a kill switch to turn it off if I don't like the outcome that's happening? So I think the broader question is really, are boards understanding the technology at the same rate that the technology is defining itself and defining what management is doing, and how are they working together with the management teams to make sure that the learning is happening, in a way where the boards can provide oversight, can really deliver on their fiduciary duties, and it's a challenge these days. I think I'll speak to my own experience with cybersecurity. I was, as we started digging into cybersecurity, I was one of the board members that started leaning into, what does good governance look like? And in that case, I was learning from the management team, specifically the CIO. And, I would say I was a bit of a pain in the bottom for him for a while there, because I was having to learn while they were actually doing the work. What's been interesting and different with AI is we're all learning simultaneously. And the technology is changing so fast. As a director, I've got an obligation to understand what the technology means and how it impacts the business. They're figuring it out at the same time. So I think that's the fundamental difference. The board is providing oversight and learning simultaneously with the management team. So that framing is just fundamentally different these days.
Boards ultimately remain accountable for the integrity of the company's financial reporting. As AI systems become more autonomous, how should directors think differently about oversight, controls, and accountability?
I think we always go back to what questions are board members asking, and you go to an event, it's like, you need to ask these questions. I don't think that's the right framing for this right now. I think boards have an obligation to learn and understand the technology. The management teams have an obligation to understand the technology. You can't provide oversight to things that you don't understand. And if I ask a good question, my responsibility is to understand, am I getting a good answer? And that's where the education piece, especially for the technology as disruptive as AI. One of the boards that I'm on, the board chair actually just took one of the NACD courses that came out on AI in conjunction with Carnegie Mellon. And it's a certification that, the board chair is taking. And, in a recent meeting, we had a conversation. We need our board members to really invest in education around some of these topics, because asking the question is half of your fiduciary duty. Understanding what a good answer is the more important piece. And with the new and disruptive technology where, every Friday you're teaching history, you've got to invest in education with the management team at a rate that I don't think I've seen in my career.
If an audit committee wanted to strengthen its oversight of AI over the next year, what are the 2 or 3 most important governance practices or controls it should focus on first?
Recently wrote an article about exactly this topic. And with audits specifically, board members sign off on those financial statements. So one of the core thought processes is anytime AI touches anything that is going to be influenced or impacted on your ledger, you've got to understand what that AI is doing. You've got to understand where the human is in the loop, either certifying or checking the work. And we talked about it a little bit earlier. That there may be a kill switch that you have to contemplate. So, from an audit standpoint, obviously, the focus is on enterprise risk management and all the systems and processes. You've got suppliers who have AI that might be touching your data. Your auditor has AI that's touching your data. And, as we started to delve into some of these conversations, you need to understand which model is actually touching it, who owns it. So your management team has to do the work of really auditing all the AI systems that are touching touching your systems, which is absolutely critical. You've got to understand, is there a human in the loop? Where does that happen? How are things getting signed off? Because again, if it's rolling back into the ledger, such that it's going to impact your financial statements, those are the types of questions that we have to ask. And again, what I found is the management team is learning some of these lessons at the same rate as the board is. So you can't wait for board meetings to have some of these conversations. There's got to be a lot more discussion, around what's happening, how it's happening, what the oversight is even looking like in between the meetings. And again, this is at a rate that I just hadn't seen in my career at all yet.
Many boards receive updates that suggest the company has AI governance under control. What questions should directors ask to determine whether meaningful governance is actually in place or if it's just checking off a box?
Yeah, and I think so. Here, this is where asking one question I don't think is really enough, because with a new and disruptive technology, oftentimes it's like the second and third order questions, and you may not have time in the board meeting to actually get to the level of detail and understanding. And that's why I say the board meeting is important. Here's an example of, in a recent board meeting. Do we have a kill switch for any AI that touches anything with the supply chain? And, you get the inquisitive look, and it's like, all right, if the AI starts shipping everything to Idaho, right? How do you turn that off? And again, a bit of an inquisitive look. Folks hadn't really thought about that. So there's a new set of terms that I think directors need to start leaning into around, both what agents are actually interacting with our data. When I'll give a classic example. All the contracts that we've written with our contractors usually have requirements around, providing data. So do those contracts actually mention AI at all? Do we know if our suppliers have AI agents touching any of our data? And I suspect that a lot of them do, and we just hadn't asked those questions, and they're not in our contracts. So a great question to ask is, for all of our key suppliers, are we starting, number one, do we have language in the contracts that we're writing that addresses AI and some of the things that we need? But more importantly, who are some of our key suppliers? And we know this from cybersecurity. The biggest risk often comes from third parties. So we've got to really extend that guidance and that oversight into third parties and systems with a bunch of contracts that hadn't been updated for this new and incredible technology.